How do we feel about Taiwan, Hasan?
One country, two systems, you know?
No, it's not. It's two different countries.
There's one thing I learned from my years growing up in China, and that is language is the first tool of power. Modern autocrats rarely lead with force anymore. They lead with words, and not emotional words, but words that are deliberately dull, neutral, technical, or unthreatening. Take the word reunification as an example. It is not an accident that you often see these Chinese diplomats use this word whenever they talk about Taiwan. This word sounds neutral, even positive in some contexts. But the Chinese Communist Party used this word to disguise their true ideology and intention, and that is a potential annexation of Taiwan. This kind of linguistic framing has been extremely effective, so much so that it has brought millions of Chinese people on board with ideas that they otherwise would have rejected. That is why today I want to take a closer look at what Hasan Piker said about China, and more importantly, how is he saying it?
So you think the Chinese Communist Party would allow criticism of them if they were the dominant country in the world?
I think with respect to where they were in terms of the most maximalist position is the Cultural Revolution, right? If you look at the Cultural Revolution versus where China is now in terms of dissent, it's in comparison to the United States of America, yes, there's still heavy control over that sort of stuff. There's a lot of surveillance. Having said that, it has become far more tolerant as material conditions have improved. And that's my main thesis, is that countries, regardless of their individual forms of governance, as long as they are advancing the material needs of the broadest subset of the masses, will and become like a domineering force on their own and have full sovereignty and full autonomy, they will inevitably become more tolerant to this kind of freedom.
When I heard Hasan insinuating that when China has more sovereignty, more autonomy, it would give its citizens more freedom, I knew something was off there. The subtle message that somehow China doesn't have those two things yet just sounds awfully familiar to me, because that's exactly what my teacher said when I was a student in China. He repeats all the dog whistles used by these technocrats or dictators. Words like sovereignty, words like multipolarity. We want a more multipolarized world. It sounds so neutral. It sounds so fair.
Slated to overtake America in a multipolar world.
That's not what they mean. When Russia says we want a multipolarized world, they mean they don't want a rule-based order anymore. They don't want a world where democracy leads. They want authoritarianism. That's the diverse element in this multi. That's what's multi about it. I mean, look at what they've done to Ukraine. Do we really want a multipolarized world like that, where an authoritarian regime has so much power that they could just take a country that doesn't have as much force as they do? Is that what we really want? When they say sovereignty, they mean don't interfere with our oppression of our own people. They don't want you to criticize their human rights misconduct. They don't want you to pay attention to the Uyghur that are suffering right now in the re-education camp in Xinjiang, because they say it's sovereignty. It is not. It's human decency. Why do people, for the life of me, I do not understand how does someone like Hasan Piker got so brainwashed. I understand if he was born in China and they were subject to that. They had no choice. They had an internet firewall. But what happened to people like him?
How do we feel about Taiwan, Hasan? China or not China?
Taiwan?
Or is it China or not China? You really won't say?
No, I'm saying it's like one country, two systems, you know?
No, it's not. It's two different countries.
Really?
I'm hardly the first or the only person who noticed the overuse of the word multipolarity. One of my favorite books on authoritarianism, Autocracy, Inc., the author also made the same observation based on her extensive years working as a reporter, reporting on autocrats in Europe.
But when you are getting the poorest of the dispossessed masses out of a situation where they were servile to landed gentry, or they were peasants from an agrarian society, or they were dominated by the landlords, but then ultimately they were able to come into modernity and become like a powerhouse, an industrial powerhouse that is competitive with the largest superpower on the planet.
The way that the Chinese Communist Party was able to supposedly free all the peasants from their evil landlord is through land reform. That is the infamous revolution that killed, by estimation of historians, 1 to 2 million people in China. It did not give us prosperity. We died. They publicly executed the landlords and confiscated by force their properties. And that's how they liberated the peasants. And guess what? Those peasants didn't own those lands anyways. Even right now here, if you want to purchase a piece of land in China, you can only own it for like a certain period of time. You don't have the ownership. The state, the government owns it. They can take that away from you if they want at any given time.
Communist country. Would you say China is a communist country?
It's a mixed country. It has some elements of communism, but it's also got a lot of capitalism,
Yeah,
right?
it's a mixed market economy is what you're saying, right? But so is the United States of America, if you look at it from that perspective. Because America also has some semblance of social safety nets. The UK also has some social safety nets, state-run enterprises, especially pre-Margaret Thatcher, I would say, versus private enterprises as well. Venezuela at its peak, I think, had more privatization and more private enterprise in its economy.
The point is not whether it has a mixture or not. The point is when we have state-controlled organizations, everything is under a legal binding. It is not a facade. It is real. If the government wants to do something, they have to do so following the law. In China, however, the mixture was only temporary and is not protected by law because it's not a law-binding society. That is why the owner of Alibaba, Ma Yun, lost his company shares overnight. So many billionaires fled the country because they know this mixture economy can go away at any given time because it is not built on an agreement by the people of China. It is built by the Chinese Communist Party, and what's gotten worse in recent years is it's completely up to Xi Jinping, that one person. So does China have a mixture economy? Maybe, but that's very temporary. That is very much superficial. And in our lifetime, we might see that disappear.